breakfast.
Good morning, and welcome to Comics for Breakfast. I'm your host, Jason MINK. Jack Kirby. What can I possibly say that hasn't already been said? Born Jacob Kurtzberg on August 28, 1917, in New York City, New York, Jacob was one of two children born to Austrian Jewish immigrants. The boy's artistic potential was evident at a young age, with the lad drawing on everything from the family's discarded butcher paper to the hallway walls of his parents' apartment building. And while young Jacob's scholastic training in art was limited to a single week at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, he wasn't about to let that stop him from tapping into the unknown worlds whirling in his mind's eye. Joining the Lincoln newspaper syndicate in 1936, Kurtzberg began drawing simple comic strips and spot art for advice columns. But within 3 years, he landed a better gig, drawing comic books for Syndicated Features Corporation. Working under a variety of pseudonyms, the young artist provided work for titles such as Socko the Sea Dog and Wilton of the West. It was from these humble beginnings the king came, and such a beginning requires a fresh start. Now signing his name Jack Kirby, the artist began working for Fox Feature Syndicate. It was at Fox that Kirby met fellow artist Joe Simon. The two discovered they had a natural synergy and soon partnered. Leaving Fox, the pair wound up at Marvel precursor Timely Comics, where they got down to business. Their first smash, Captain America, appeared in 1941, establishing the patriotic hero as a critical component in the rapidly evolving superpowered pantheon. However, disputes in profit-sharing led to the pair departing Timely for National, later DC, Comics, who had promised to pay the creators what they felt they were worth. After a short string of outs and bunts, Simon and Kirby once again scored a home run, creating the Boy Commandos in the summer of 1942, following it up with another successful teen-based actioneer, the Newsboy Legion. Kirby was drafted into the U.S. Army the following year, but National had anticipated this, accumulating a backlog of work to publish in the interim. After the war, Simon and Kirby would return to work for National as freelancers, but greener pastures beckoned. Eventually, their partnership broke up, and Kirby began submitting work to former employer Timely Comics, while at the same time continuing to freelance for National. This proved to be a wise strategy, as a contractual dispute saw Kirby leave National at the end of 1957. Timely, now known as Atlas Comics, offered the now married with kids Kirby as much work as he could handle. And though the artist grumbled about the lousy page rates and having to work with the boss's overly talkative nephew, Stanley, Kirby gamely set to work once again. And though who did what remains a debate that rages to this day, the fact is, much of what we know as the Marvel Universe sprang from the humble pen of Jack Kirby. However, that's a story for another episode. You see, the whole time Kirby was helping to usher in the new era of comics greatness over at Marvel, the powers that be at DC couldn't forget how they'd essentially let Kirby get away. All of that creative heat the artist was generating might have been theirs had they only had the forethought to pay the guy a little better. It was understood that if things ever went sideways at Marvel, that Kirby still had a place at his former company. By 1970, Kirby's issues with his employer became untenable, and the artist seemingly jumped to the competition, a move that would surely put DC squarely back on top. At his new company, Kirby was given carte blanche. DC would allow the creator to work his magic as he saw fit, and the artist got down to business. Kirby's vision was ambitious, a series of brand new interconnected titles more or less independent from the established DC universe. The seeds of the ambitiously titled Fourth World were first sown in the pages of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen before the concept sprang to startling life in 3 new titles: The New Gods, The Forever People, and today's first startling installment, Mr. Miracle. And we're starting with issue 1 because anything else would be uncivilized. Our story begins with a young man observing an enigmatic duo. The diminutive chap pleads with his brightly clad partner not to go through with his strange intentions, but the self-described Mr. Miracle will not be swayed. He enters a wooden cabinet and is bolted in before his companion sets the box ablaze with a flamethrower. The young observer, unsure of what it is he's seeing, leaps into action, attempting to save the imprisoned man. He tries to extinguish the blaze with his coat, but moments later, the box explodes open. Mr. Miracle has escaped again. The 2 mystery men begin to squabble. Oberon chides Miracle. He's too slow to be doing such tricks. However, Miracle turns his attention to the new arrival. Turns out his real name is Thaddeus Brown, and the lad introduces himself as Scot-Free. We're told this unlikely moniker is a gift of sorts from the orphanage where he grew up. Before Scott can elaborate further, the trio are abruptly interrupted by members of something called Intergang, who seem to be a bunch of real bad apples. They think I smell. One of the thugs pulls a gun on Miracle, and Scott leaps into action. Miracle takes out their leader while Scott tackles the goons with his bag. Hey, that thing must be a Samsonite. But the kid don't need luggage to be effective, tossing the thugs around and disarming them of their exotic weaponry. He even makes like Moe and knocks their coconuts together in a move that's sure to leave some serious lumps. The gang flees, and Scott rushes to Thaddeus' side, helping the older man to his feet. This does not go unnoticed, as the scene is being monitored from afar. Words get back to the big boss that the gang has failed in their efforts to intimidate Miracle. Wow, this guy makes Doc Ock look positively sunny by comparison. That's okay. He'll deal with Miracle in his own way, as the Steel Hand. Our villain revealed, he recounts his kooky origin for the reader, demonstrating his steel hand, so we know he means business. He tells his boys he's taking the case over, cueing either Herky or Nails here for his need of a sniper. Cut back to the Miracle residence, and Scott has taken Thaddeus up on his offer for a place to stay. He's worried that Intergang will return to finish off his new friend, but Thad isn't terribly concerned. We learn a little about the older man's backstory. He'd once had a family, a wife and son, both now dead. It was his son Ted who'd created the Mr. Miracle persona for his father, helping develop the act that would make the performer legendary. Now, Miracle is set to perform his greatest feat ever, challenged by the diabolical Steel Hand. But even the legendary escape artist has doubts he'll be able to pull this one off. Scott tells Thaddeus he needs to eliminate the X factor in his performance, and Thaddeus is game to learn how. Scott reaches into his mysterious satchel, then allows himself to be bound in heavy iron chains. Impossibly, the chains burst, freeing the young man almost effortlessly. So, how did Scott pull this little trick? Why, with this little mystery doodad. Thaddeus is impressed, but refuses to push Scott for his secrets, although Oberon demands the younger man help Miracle perfect his escape. However, it's a matter of pride for Thaddeus, as he and Steel Hand have a long and troubled relationship. The following day, the Hand and his sniper have taken place high on a hill. In the valley below, Mr. Miracle prepares to escape from the aforementioned trap, a massive steel sphere that will crush him to paste unless he slips his chains. Uneasily, Oberon performs his task, releasing the deadly object and sending it speeding down the hill. Before Miracle can make his move, he's shot by a sniper, leaving Scott to save the day. He rushes in front of the murderous spheroid, emitting a concussive bolt of force from his outstretched hand. The bolt repels the rolling doom, sending it harmlessly on its way. Scott rushes to Thaddeus's side, but the man is already dying. Oberon appears as Scott pulls up his sleeve, revealing the enigmatic Mother Box. The box emits a tone that puts Thaddeus at ease, releasing him from his pain and allowing him to die peacefully. A tearful Oberon reveals the terms of the contest between his departed friend and the deadly Steel Hand. The Hand wagered he could create a trap that even Mr. Miracle could not escape, a boast that, sadly, has proven true. Back in the Hand's hideout, the villain consults with Stuka, a Slim Whitman-esque take on James Bond's Q. He shows off a new toy to his boss, a big old Kirby robot with oversized mitts, ideal for arm wrestling. The Hand, however, isn't impressed and shuts the overgrown Tinker Toy down with little effort. He wants a challenge, dang it. And hey, here comes one now. Why, it's Mr. Miracle, through the window no less. The Hand is staggered at the dead man's appearance, with Miracle chucking Stuka aside like an empty Pringles can. The Hand demands Miracle let him off the hook, but the brightly clad intruder has a counteroffer. Confess in writing to the shooting of Thaddeus Brown. Steel Hand presses a button, summoning intergang thugs who subdue Miracle. And to avoid the embarrassment of his foe coming back from the dead a second time, the escape artist is lashed to the nose cone of a rocket and sent sailing into the stratosphere. Or so it seems. Confident he's dealt with his foe permanently, Steel Hand returns to his office, only to find an unexpected visitor. The old coot loses it. He flips his giggy and begins busting the place up. However, Scott, as Mr. Miracle, is too smart to indulge in such knuckle-headed fisticuffs, and unleashes a barrage of bizarre devices which subdue and incapacitate his octogenarian opponent. Oberon shows up with the cops, Steel Hand is hauled off to jail, and a new heroic legacy is born. Mr. Miracle was the closest thing to a conventional costume superhero as Kirby seemed prepared to get, and while the book was a modest success, neither it nor the other titles were exactly setting the world on fire. As the sales figures slowly trickled in, it became clear that the Fourth World, while conceptually and artistically stunning, wasn't exactly a force of nature on the newsstand. Kirby, never short of ideas, immediately went back to the drawing board, eager to provide DC with a big win. The artist had always shown an affinity for youth and contemporary trends in fantasy, and Kirby drew from both for his next offering, a senses-staggering vision of the world of the future. That's right, it could only be Kamandi, the last boy on Earth. A young boy desperately rose against a savage tide, attempting to understand the world around him. This is Kamandi, and the city he seeks is gone, the one-time metropolis known as New York, swallowed up by a remorseless sea. Now directionless, he rows on, eventually finding land and survivors of the catastrophe. To his surprise, Kamandi's appearance frightens the group, who quickly vanish into the undergrowth. Ahead, an explosion booms from the direction of the bunker. One of the booby traps Kamandi has set to protect his home has been triggered, disabling this old-school tank. Worried for the safety of his grandfather in the bunker below, Kamandi descends. He discovers the bodies of looters, but worries more may still be lurking. The boy is correct, as his worst fears are confirmed. Having breached the living area, the intruders have killed Kamandi's grandfather. Kamandi shoots one of them in the back, but is shocked to see the face on the other. Instead of a human like he or his grandfather, the intruder is some sort of man-beast, and it's pissed. Shockingly, the beast can speak and attempts to talk the boy into handing over his weapon. Instead, Kamandi fires, but the wolf-like creature dodges. The two begin to grapple, but what seems to be a one-sided confrontation is prolonged by Kamandi's speed and spirit. He tumbles his attacker, then races off into the maze-like bunker, where he tricks the wolf into a deadly trap. Lured into ankle-high water, Kamandi uses a nearby power cable to light up his pursuer's life. Dispatched by the deadly charge, Kamandi is free of the wolf and leaves his bunker of sorrows to ascend to the surface world. He finds a modified VW van and hops in. Being the clever type, Kamandi figures out how to get the rig running, and presumably with Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper blaring in the 8-track, he rolls on into a waiting world. It's not long before he hits some highway traffic in the form of an army of mounted tiger men. Kamandi hides from the weird creatures, but spies a nearby sniper set to shoot the Tiger King. Our hero interferes, and, in a show of appreciation, the king abducts him. And speaking of the king, how about the stunning Kirby panel? Dig the depth and detail present in an image a reader might linger over only for a few moments. The momentum sweeps us into the next page, where we discover the enemy are man-like leopards. I'm betting Kamandi wishes he'd stayed in his bunker right about now. The battle rages, and King Caesar hands off his human prize to a lieutenant who knocks the kid out. Kamandi wakes in a rolling cage, bound for the horror of the Royal City Kennels. It is here the surviving humans are brought to have their wills broken and be indoctrinated into a life of slavery. Kamandi is repelled by their savagery and decides to escape. After being roughed up, the fiery youth slips his handlers and rushes off into the depths of the kennel. He doesn't get far, however, brought to heel by the strange hybrids. Now cleaned up all purdy-like, Kamandi is set to be presented to King Caesar in a ritual, but before that can happen, everyone's gotta worship the bomb. Okay, maybe Jack had seen Beneath the Planet of the Apes on TV the night before and felt inspired, or maybe furries just really go for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Whatever the case, Kamandi isn't impressed and decides to take the whole nightmare out by escaping and then detonating said bomb. Kid doesn't fool around. Before the issue can come to a belated end, Dr. Canis here jumps Kamandi and stops him with some dog foo. His masters are pleased with Canis and allow the besuited Bowser to rehabilitate the boy. The pair return to Canis's lab, where Kamandi gets snarky. But hey, the dog doc gets it. The kid's shook up, but he knows just what'll help. Turns out he's got an astronaut on ice, and kids just love astronauts. Even better, this guy is polite, has great hair, and, oh yeah, he's radioactive as Aunt May's old power plant. He puts on a laserium demonstration for his new pal, but tamps it down before anyone can get comfortably numb. This is Ben Boxer, and, in spite of his atomicness, he's human. Kamandi collapses against the older man's chest, relieved to know he's not alone in this strange new world. Readers responded to Kamandi, making it one of Jack's most successful offerings. Indeed, the character and the fantastic world he inhabited would continue to be published after Kirby left DC to return to Marvel in 1976. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Kamandi would go on to reappear in various DC Comics properties decades later, even getting his own action figure in 2010. Not bad for a kid with no shirt. In 1972, with his fourth world essentially DOA, Kirby dug deep, unearthing a creation far different than anything readers had seen from him so far. torn from the violent past, thrust into an uncertain present to either save or destroy the future. The demon seemed like the odd man out in a company populated by benevolent, smiling uncle types like Superman and Batman. The character's overly occult nature seemed at odds with DC's white bread aesthetic, but at this point, the higher-ups were out of ideas. If it worked, great. If not, they'd just write out Kirby's contract and move on. But hey, enough of all that background junk. What about the comic? Let's get to it. The evil ones storm the gates, but the wizard Merlin will not let them have the Eternity Book. Outside, the walls of Camelot shake under the brutal assault as the troops of the evil Morgan Le Fay wage war against the kingdom of King Arthur. And though Arthur's men fight mightily, Morgan's dark magic is greater, and she breaches the sturdy gates. She dispatches her horde to find Merlin, and they begin to pour locust-like into the compromised city. However, the front line is brutally repelled by a hideous force, one that sends the armored tide sprawling. This is Etrigan, a demon in the service of the aforementioned Merlin. The wizard beckons Etrigan to his side. Knowing he is about to be captured by Morgan, Merlin tears a page from the Eternity Book and gives it to the demon, who he dispatches to the future. Mustering his uncanny might, Merlin readies a powerful spell and annihilates himself, Camelot, and Morgan's forces. Fast forward to today, where demonologist Jason Blood consults with occult specialist Whorley. He provides the man a scrap of paper that has been handed down through his family for generations. Whorley confirms that, yes, the parchment is authentic. But what of it? What does the man want with him? It seems a demon haunts Jason Blood's dreams, one he feels has meaning he can only discover by speaking to a true sorcerer. However, before Whorley gives the guy anything, he's going to have to prove himself, and sets the suit of armor on his guest. Sheesh. Set out some snacks, make the guy drink, sure, but try and kill him. Very inhospitable. Blood proves to be the resourceful type, and using objects at hand, manages to rout the attacking armor, knocking himself out in the process. Unconscious, the dream demon returns to haunt Blood, shrieking one word over and over again: Etrigan. Meanwhile, in the waking world, we discover Whorley is an agent of Morgan Le Fay, who has managed to defy time and death itself. However, Morgan's strength has at last ebbed. She needs the Eternity Book to survive, and her only way to find it is through the demon. Hours later, Blood is awakened by a passing patrolman who's seen it all before. Folks always come up here to see the old haunted house, but it's nothing but trouble in the end, and he gamely sees the addled Blood off. Meanwhile, in Europe, a statue up and walks away. To the surprise of the gendarmes, the earth itself opens, a light drawing the shuffling stone sentinel towards a compelling voice. But hey, let's not dwell on that. Two chaps are wrestling in their underpants at the Gotham City Men's Club. Through a little bit of good-natured horseplay, we're introduced to our supporting characters. Here's sparring partner Randu and coach Harry Matthews, whose repartee sets up the upcoming scene. Blood is throwing a party tonight, and it should be a good time. He even has a blind date. However, Blood seems more interested in historian Miss Glenda Mark, who is taken by his ancestral collection of artifacts. The gang gear up for the big party, using items from the collection to dress the part. Blood gamely allows this, his attention clearly elsewhere. He even admits to knowing Rembrandt, quite the odd thing for a 1970s-era swinger to say. Before the shindig can get shaking, the previously summoned statue shows up at the front door. In classic Kirby fashion, it's disguised in a scarf and overcoat, by now a hilarious trope in the creator's repertoire. It provides Blood with a mysterious scroll, and with that, the party's over. Blood sends everyone home, then confronts his stone-faced companion. The scroll speaks of Brannock Castle, located in the heart of darkest Europe, and Blood demands the silent sentry take him there at once. LeFay observes this through a hidden mirror, then follows her prey as he makes his way to the heart of the mystery. Blood and the animated statue make their way across the continent, eventually reaching Castle Brannock. However, the ancient edifice is far from uninhabited, as the pair are attacked by masked assassins. The statue saves Blood, allowing the intrepid demonologist to penetrate deeper into the castle. He's summoned through a glowing gate into the depths of the moldering pile. Running a gauntlet of flaming claws, he comes upon a curious altar, one inscribed with oddly familiar sigils. The gargoyles within the circle rise to life, but then bow before Blood as he steps upon the altar. Reading the inscription, a startling change overcomes him as Blood is transformed once again into the infernal Etrigan. However, before anything more can transpire, Morgan Le Fay appears, her forces swarming into the ancient vault. With a roar, the demon leaps upon his enemy, once again free in man's world. Mind-blowing stuff. In spite of recent fouls, Kirby continued to swing for the bleachers. Unlike his previously heady offerings, the demon was direct and literal. Here, Kirby seemed to recognize his strengths as a storyteller and lean into them, leaving the speculative fiction of the recent past behind for something more immediate and visceral. The demon only ran for 16 issues, but, like other Kirby-created characters we've looked at today, Etrigan went on to become something of a DC Comics mainstay. Indeed, he's my sister-in-law's favorite character. Successful at the newsstand or not, that's gotta be some kind of win. Kirby created several other titles during his 70s tenure at DC, including one of my childhood favorites, The Sandman. If you'd like to see these books featured here, let me know in the comments section below. If this video really made your mother box ping, please like it, share it, and subscribe it. We'd like to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year. If we do, hey, drinks are on me. I'm Jason Mink, and I hope to see you next week at breakfast.